for March 21st, 2023. If you'd all rise for the flag pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Okay, just quick before we get started, if anybody hasn't signed in, please sign in. We want you to be signed in. Cell phones, electronics, please put on silent. Shouldn't have to say that, but usually somebody's goes off, so please put them on silent. And just note that everything we're doing here tonight is recorded. So we do have one commissioner that's on on the internet through Zoom. So anybody that does speak, please make sure you speak clearly into the microphone. Okay, I have a few items to cover before we get, I already did that. The task of the Planning Commission is to hold a public hearing and to make a recommendation to the County Board of Commissioners for approval or denial of request for conditional and interim use permits, rezones, plats, and ordinance amendments in accordance with state law and county ordinance. The burden of approving a request meets the criteria for approval rests with the applicant. Members of the Planning Commission are appointed by the County Board of Commissioners with one member from each of the 5 commissioner districts. Land Service staff is here to assist the Planning Commission with its duties. At the close of each public hearing, you will know what the Planning Commission's recommendation is to the County Board of Commissioners. The County Board of Commissioners will then consider the request at their next regular meeting and will either grant or deny the request. I'm going to give a brief overview of our proceedings this evening. I will read the request. While I'm reading your request, I would ask that the applicant and their representatives will come forward, sit up front, and state your name in the microphones for the record, please. Land Service staff will provide a staff report for each request and read any correspondence that has been received regarding the request. The applicant and or representatives will then provide any input, corrections, concerns, or comments. Once the applicant or the representatives have provided their testimony, the Planning Commission will discuss the request and ask questions of staff or the applicant. Upon completion, the Planning Commission questions, I will ask if there is anyone in the audience wishing to speak to this request. If there is, I would ask that the person come up, give their name, where they're located, and for the record, speak into the microphone up at the podium up there in the corner by the door, please. Be as factual as possible. We don't want to know that the guy runs your dog over every day. Neighborhood endorsement or opposition in itself is not valid reason to approve or deny an application. In order for the Planning Commission to evaluate your comments, we need to know your reasons for input on the application. All statements or questions must be directed to the chair, not to the applicant, nor will the applicant direct questions or statements to the public. Once all comments have been received, any question posted to the chair will be addressed at the close of the public hearing. When all testimony is complete, I will close the public hearing. Once the hearing is closed, there will be no further input from the audience, from the applicant, or Land Service staff unless recognized by the chair, or if one of the Planning Commission members wants some type of clarification. The Planning Commission will review and discuss the finding of fact criteria questions. The findings are a series of questions that the Planning Commission is required to answer based on state statute and the request of the ordinance, and the requirements of the ordinance. Based upon the answers to those questions, the Planning Commission will then vote on each question. All questions must be answered in the affirmative by the Planning Commission to recommend approval for the request to the Board of Commissioners. The Planning Commission may also place conditions on the request if it deems necessary to remediate a negative finding of fact. Once the findings are complete, there will be a motion to recommend approval or denial of the request based on those findings. That will conclude the public hearing, and you can leave if you wish. Any follow-up questions should be directed to Land Services staff during regular business hours. Okay, first on our agenda tonight would be Jerome and Mary Rose Capco. So if you and your representatives will want to come up and sit at the table, please. Jerome and Mary Rose Capco, 4731 Cable Road, Swanville, Minnesota. Application for a conditional use permit to expand to a Tier 2 cattle feedlot located in the point of the north half, Section 10, Township 128, Range 31, Swanville Township. So if you guys would go ahead and state your names for the record, please.
I'm Jared Capco.
I'm Jerome Capco.
I'm Mary Rose Capco.
Thank you. Welcome. So I guess at this time, Amy, you ready for the staff report?
I am, Mr. Chair. Again, this is an application to expand to a Tier 2B feedlot located in Section 10 of Swanville Township. The ordinance reference for this request is 604.6, and that does require a conditional use permit for establish or expansion of feedlots. Here is a plat map of Swanville Township, and the red dot is the location of the parcel. And then here is the conditional use permit request received from the applicant. And here's an aerial photograph of the parcel outlined in blue. And some oblique imagery of the property as well. The applicant recently purchased this 48.9 acre parcel, and the applicant owns contiguous parcels for a total of 221.35 acres. A Tier 1B feedlot exists on the property today, and the total animal units currently is 189. So here is the a map with the other property ownership other than this particular parcel. The applicant is proposing to expand to a Tier 2B feedlot through the remodel of the existing buildings on site, and the total proposed animal units is 334. The existing animal holding areas are compliant and meet all applicable setbacks. The Swan River is 1,050 feet south of the nearest animal holding area, and this body of water is impaired for aquatic recreation and aquatic life due to bacteria levels and dissolved oxygen from human and animal activity. A scrape and haul regime is currently utilized for manure management. There are future plans to construct a manure stacking slab for manure storage and field application at more desirable times of the year. Manure pen pack with no liquid manure storage or generation is field applied spring and fall. For manure application, the applicant utilizes 317 acres. The acreage is in Swanville Township in Morrison County. 77 spreadable acres is needed to utilize nitrogen, and 85 acres is needed to utilize phosphorus. And then the offset rating for this feedlot is 99%, and that does include the additional cattle. I'll remind the Planning Commission that with our ordinance change, this is no longer a requirement, but it is a information point that we will continue to include. The applicant has submitted a Morrison County Good Neighbor Plan. That plan identifies that manure will be chisel plowed within 24 hours of application, and mortality disposal is identified as composting with rendering as a backup. Also submitted an odor minimization plan, and that plan identifies development of a neighbor relation plan, reduction of nutrient waste with diet manipulation, elimination of manure buildup, prompt cleanup of spilled feed, management of mortalities as required by the Minnesota Board of Animal Health, addition of straw or other bedding material to reduce odor and emissions, and reduction of length of time stockpile and manure pack is maintained for odor minimization. The applicant has been made aware that a water appropriation permit may be needed from the DNR. Agriculture zoning is the only district where new feedlots are allowed. The Morrison County Land Use Ordinance states the purpose of the agriculture zoning district is to promote and protect areas which have high-quality agricultural lands and are essentially rural in nature. Within this district, agriculture activities shall be given preference over other uses. The applicable comprehensive plan goals and objectives is agriculture goal A1, objectives 1 and 4, and objective 8. Goal A2, A3, and A4. Objective 1 and 3. And then the comprehensive water plan goals and objectives is groundwater goal 1 and 2. Surface water goal, objective A. Land use and development goal, objective A. An environmental review was conducted by the Soil and Water Conservation District. I believe the director from the Soil and Water Conservation District is here. And the comment and recommendations out of that was that the site is adequate to increase to a Tier 2 operation. Confined housing reduces the open lots, compliant by min farm standards, and future plans for manure stacking facility will enable adequate manure storage and application when field conditions are most suitable, and runoff would be directed to that structure. 33 notices were sent. One comment was received prior to the public hearing, and that was a phone call from Shannon Johnston. As you may recall, this property was owned by Shannon Johnston and has recently sold to the Capcos. He does continue to live on the property, and he had stated that he supports the move to a Tier 2 feedlot. And then there are your conditional use criteria questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Amy. Would any of the Capcos have anything to add?
Well, I think it was covered well.
Okay. Anybody on the board have any questions for the applicant or staff at this time? Go ahead, Dave.
So we get nervous here, huh? Yeah. You have a manure storage facility in your plans, which would manage all of the manure produced on that site, give you storage for an approved length of time.
9 months, I believe.
And then would contain the runoff from that one small open lot. Is that something you'll have done by the time this expansion takes place?
Well, what it is, it depends if we qualify, we apply for this grant, what would it be, the grant, or what would it be?
Through Soil and Water
Soil and
for the
Water.
manure confinement.
Is it
Anyway, yeah, for funding. They estimated a year to 2 years, on the list. They
Yeah, we're
weren't
on
sure
the
where it
list
would
for
be.
that, yeah.
This would be completed possibly by this fall. We were not sure, so it would not be before it, but hopefully within a year or two.
Yeah, that concerns me a little just because of the site that you're on. You've got such a long and steep slope there. It's 1,000 feet at 6, 7, 8% slope and directly into the river, which is already a compromised waterway. So, other than that, I don't have many questions. But I would like to consider that as a condition that before you expand or any further expansions take place on that site because of the slope, because of the river close by, and that being receiving all the water eventually, whether it's filtered or not, that would be in place to accommodate all animal units up to the top of tier 2. So, all right. Are you thinking of expanding further than this 334 or on that site?
Not at this time. We don't have
Yeah.
any plans to.
Sure. Okay. All right. That's what I had.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Marvin.
a couple of questions. Back when the Johnsons had this working dairy operation, do you know how many cows they were running in that operation?
They had around 100 to 120 milking cows, I believe, plus his other livestock.
So with that being said, usually double that is what was on that site. So there was probably a couple of hundred head at that time.
Yeah.
So you're probably not asking for much more than what they were running at one time.
Yeah, it's not much more than what he had at the time.
Okay,
We're using the same facilities as he was using, just remodeling.
okay. Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions on the planning? I guess I got a couple questions. One is, Amy, you noted in your staff report something about possibly a water permit. Can you allude to that, if that's something that has to be done or not?
Yes, Mr. Chair, it will depend on the number of head of cattle and the draw on the well. And if they meet the thresholds for water withdrawal with the DNR, then, or if they're drilling another well, they may need to secure a water appropriation permit. They have been made aware of that and are aware of the thresholds.
So that really don't weigh into our decision tonight?
No, it does not.
Okay, then, maybe Shannon's here from Soil and Water. Could you please go, I got a question for you. If you could go up to the podium, please. So Alan was out there, Ringwalski from your staff, and gave us a nice packet and kind of approval or a stamp of approval from Soil and Water, for this expansion. Mr. Stish said something about he's worried about runoff or whatever. What is your answer to that, or what, is there a concern by your Soil and Water with runoff on this farm or not, or can you allude to that a little bit?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. My name is Shannon Wetstein. I'm the Soil and Water District Manager. Good to meet you, board members, all of you. Obviously, the environmental review has little qualms about the site, and really, Alan had noted that it's a good site for expansion. I was also out on site the day that we reviewed and went to the farm, so I can speak personally, not just through what Alan has put down here. But obviously, the farm site is on a side slope of a hill that has a considerable amount of drainage coming at it. That's why the plan that the Capcos have for that site is a really best possible scenario, probably better than it was and previously managed. On site, when I was out there this winter, there is another roof storage that was additional to the aerial photos that are on Morrison County Beacon right now. So where they have some of the cattle is currently mostly under storage. There is a little bit of open lot on the site currently, but the engineered design that our engineers are working on with Capcos are going to address that open lot and then provide enough storage for the site. So with the plan that they have moving forward, it will address all dirty water on the site, and it will make those accommodations. Now, again, like I mentioned, there's a lot of water that wants to get to the Swan River, and it's always flowed that way, and it has to get that way, right? So how is that going to continue to impact the site as the expansion continues? You know, there are two natural drainage ways you can see on the east and the west of the property. The water's going to continue to flow there. With the expansion of the feedlot, I don't see there being any issues with how water is flowing off that hillside and to the river. If in any future expansion, if there were plans for open lots, say, that may be something that they would have to address, and I think they'd want to, because it'd be an awful lot of water that they'd be seeing there. But with the environmental review that you have in front of you, you know, they are still over 1,000 feet away from the Swan River, but it does kind of go into those wetland areas. On the one side, it drains into the County Road 12 ditch. On the other side, it goes into that wetland complex and makes its way there. So there is a little bit of a buffer, but the improvements that they're suggesting at the site are definitely going to be more protective of the river. And there's been considerable taxpayer contributions made to keeping the Swan River clean and trying to keep cattle poop out of that river. And so I know that that's really what we want to encourage and work towards, and I do think the expansion is addressing that. Thank you, Mr. Chair. If you have any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
I think that covers what I was looking for, Shannon. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, so then I got one more question maybe for Amy. The only, it meets all setbacks. What's the deal with like that shop and them grain bins that's on Shannon's land? Being that's no dwelling, then it don't have no setbacks, is that correct?
Mr. Chair, this property was conveyed intact, so I know you're referring back to the variance request to split the home from the farmstead. However, that did not happen.
Okay.
So the home continued, even though they don't live there, and Mr. Johnston lives there,
Yep.
that continues to be the feedlot residence, so no setback is required from the feedlot residence.
Okay.
So that is a non-issue for this.
No, I just meant with the shop and them grain bins, being it's not a dwelling.
Correct, it's not a
It is
dwelling.
no setback.
Correct.
Okay,
Yes.
yep. Okay, so before we move on a little bit, I just got a couple things that I was gonna go through, not really a lot of questions. You guys did a really good application. You could tell you probably went through this before. The packet from Soil and Water and your guys' packet really was informative, so that's why we ain't driven with a lot of questions. But a couple things I'm gonna look for, maybe to answer Dave's a little bit. These stacking slabs, it takes up to 3 years. The amount of funding that they get, it's about every 3 years. Unless you score higher, you might get a little bit sooner. But it usually takes on average about 3 years to get the manure stacking slabs. I know everybody's concerned with the water, but I don't think that's our job. That's Soil and Waters, and that's our feedlot officers to work with them to come up with plans to make sure that that's all taken care of. So that's my observation. When I look at this application, I know they're talking about going to 334 animal units, but we're approving this up to 650. So when I look at that and I look at the manure management plan, at the 334 animal units they're projecting or proposing, they got 317 acres for manure management. They're only utilizing 87 of them. So if they would go to 650, they're still gonna be only using half of their land. So I think that's a big part of this expansion stuff is our manure management, and I think they more than meet that. When I read through all the comprehensive plan goals and objectives, when I went through all them, I believe that this expansion meets all that criteria that we're looking at. So that's kind of just what I had wrote down for notes. So at this time, I'm going to open it up to anybody in the audience have any public comment on this application. If you do, please go up to the podium and the microphone, state your name for the record and where you're from. I'll have to ask 3 times, so is there any public comment? Is there any public comment?
Good evening, Ron Miller, and I just wanted to comment on this. I think a fellow dairy farmer, I see the Capco's doing a fine job, and I believe that they would respect the natural resources and the surrounding area, and I don't think that there should be any worry, by approving this. I would strongly support you guys approving it and increasing the agriculture industry and the future of agriculture in this area. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll ask one final time, any other public comment? If seeing none, we'll close this portion of the meeting to the public. So at this time, I'll just ask one more time if anybody on the planning commission has any questions. If not, we'll move to our criteria questions. Go ahead, Mr. Stish.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, just a little clarification on those animal units. I doubt that there were ever more than 200 animal units on there when the Johnsons farmed the place, about probably where you are right now. But they are proposing to go to 354, and again, the permit is for up to 600. So And I agree with, the environmental review, the assessment of that given by Shannon, that, most things are in place. And the environmental review is positive because of that manure storage facility, which not only puts manure under cover for the time that it's needed before it can be spread to the fields, but also controls runoff from any open feedlots that there might be there. There's a small one right now that could use some protection. So that's why I was saying that I think as the environmental review is assessing it with the manure storage and that open feedlot runoff, that should be something we should condition, whether it be to get done within by the end of 2025 or whatever, give a reasonable time limit on that. That's my opinion on that.
Okay, one more time. Shannon, can you go up there again? Is your recommendation to have a condition like that or not?
Mr. Chair, and out of respect for Chairman Stish, our funding is one of those things where we get what we get, and you might not always get all the projects that are good funded for that year. And so I know that we are working towards a successful high-ranking application, and it will be a good project once it's funded. But I think without funding, a project like that is financially very strapping, and making a condition with a timeline for that funding makes me a bit uncomfortable because I know how it works. It can take, like you said, Mr. Chair, a few years to get that in place. The site right now with the animals that are at that location, a lot of the expansion is going to be actually happening inside the barn, too, and kind of that's all undercover. The open feedlot right now that currently has steers in it, that area, when you compare it to other sites, it's a really minimal, I think it was 4,000 square feet of open lot is all that was there at that location. So it's a relatively small open lot.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Amy.
may I ask a question of Shannon?
Yeah, go ahead.
Shannon, so based on the environmental review, without the stacking slab, with the expansion, would the feedlot be in compliance?
The feedlot is currently in compliance and would be in compliance, even with the open lot there.
Okay, thank you.
So just to answer your question with the condition, and maybe I didn't hear it well enough, but to have a date on it, I would be uncomfortable with. I apologize.
Okay. So everything's kosher in your deal right now. Let's say they want to expand that outside lot before a stacking slab would go in. Let's say they're gonna make that, double that and go to 8,000 square feet. Is that gonna put anything at risk until they'd get the stacking slab and some of that stuff done? Just,
I guess that would be a question for the applicants. I don't believe that that's the plan to go to a larger open lot right there. So maybe that would
no,
be a
that's
better.
fine. I want to know if they would do that, would that take it out of compliance?
Oh, that's a hard question to answer.
Okay.
I can't answer that right now. Being that it's that close to the wetland, and depending on how they expanded it, it could be in compliance still. It could not be in compliance, depending on which way it was sloped and which way it was done. But I'm assuming that they would do it in a way that the water is not going to run directly to the wetland. But again, I don't think that that's what they're proposing, so it's hard to answer that question.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Marv.
I'd like to make a few comments. First of all, I kind of know a little bit of the Capco operation, and they've been farming together, I believe, around 40 years. You've got an excellent track record, been stewards of the land, and I think a person's track record speaks for itself, and I agree. When you go ahead and you put a condition, and sometimes you have to put conditions when people have poor track records and doing things. They've been excellent stewards. I believe this could hamper them, so I don't believe that condition should be added.
Okay. Dave, you have a rebuttal for Shannon or anything?
Oh, no
before-
rebuttals ever.
Oh, or just you have any question or anything being?
No,
Okay.
I think she's answered the questions well, and, yep, and nobody knows what the future brings, so you can't assess how that's gonna be. We just, there are guidelines in place for stacking manure, where manure can be stacked, and we do have a feedlot officer that enforces those rules. So, yeah, you know, in an ideal world, a condition would be the best, but, yeah, doesn't sound very popular.
Okay, Shannon, thank you very much. Just remember, this conditional use permit would go with the land too, you know, it ain't just the cap goes, it's for, with the land, you know, just to keep in mind. You guys have a comment? Go ahead.
Yeah, I'd just like to add that at least with our current plan is that the big red barn on the plan, we plan to remodel the inside and our expansion would be completely under roof. We don't have any plans to expand the outside lots or anything at this time. The current open lot would be staying the same as it is.
Yeah, and see, my point was getting at, Dave, was that if they would expand outside or any of that stuff, it's our feedlot officer's job to keep an eye on that, take care of that. If there's a problem, then it's work and coincide with soil and water on that. So that's why I just figured we didn't have to do a condition, because they get paid a lot more than we do to sit here for 2 hours and talk about a condition, so.
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Quick question for the Capcos. How much manure storage do you have in those buildings? I mean, how often will they have to be cleaned out? I mean, each one might be a little different, but 2 months, 3 months, and where would your manure go during the off-season when you can't spread it? Those two questions.
On average, we can probably make it 2 to 3 months. We bet it about weekly. Currently, any like runoff or sloppy manure, we either spread out, you know, if the time is right, or else we can haul to our main site's containment to keep it from being a soupy mess or anything like that, or to run off.
Okay. So 2 to 3 months of
Per building.
storage,
of yeah.
bedding pack,
Yeah.
and then an off-site storage place if you need it.
Yep, if needed, if the conditions aren't
Okay.
right.
All right, thanks.
Okay, thank you. I think we'll move to the criteria questions. Okay, so question 1. The use will not put excess burden on roadways, utilities, and public facilities such as parks and schools. I'll start with Brent on this one.
I don't think it'll put any excess burden on roadways, or utilities or public facilities. There's already existing farm that may have laid dormant for a while, so it'll be exercising that once again, but it's not going to put an excessive burden on anything.
Okay, anybody else on the board have something to add to that? If not, we'll move to question 2. This will be for Mr. Stish. The request will not be detrimental to the use and enjoyment of other property in the immediate vicinity for the purposes already permitted, nor impede the normal and orderly development and improvement of surrounding vacant property for uses predominant in the area.
Letters went out to surrounding neighbors. The only feedback was a positive one from the nearest neighbor, if you'd call him a neighbor, I guess. You know, setbacks are met and exceeded. Odor offset is at 99%. You don't get much better than that. No impact on, or very little impact on neighbors' property or the use of their property.
Okay, anybody have anything to add to Mr. Stish's answer? If not, we'll move to question 3. This one will be for Marvin. The use and opinion of the Planning Commission is reasonably related to the existing land use and the environment. Groundwater, surface water, and air quality in the surrounding area will not be adversely affected by this proposed use.
Yes, and the reason why, as we heard from Shannon Westine, and Soil and Water supports this, they reviewed it. And Dave mentioned about the manure offset, it's recommended 91%, they've got 99%. It's unbelievable, the amount of manure storage they have. They only need 85 acres, they got 317 acres. So everything has been looked at, so this fits right into what we'd feel reasonable for this piece of property.
Okay, anybody have anything else to add to Marvin's answer? If not, we'll move to question 4. That'll be for John. The use is consistent with the purposes of the zoning ordinance and the purposes of the zoning district in which the applicant intends to locate the proposed use.
This is consistent with the purpose and, I mean, the plan and the application, and we heard from Soil and Water, everything is in order and well above standard, so.
Okay, anybody have anything else to add to John's answer? If not, we'll move to question 5, and that'll be for myself. The use is not in conflict with the comprehensive plan or the water plan of the county. Yes, I believe it is not in conflict. When I went through, like I stated earlier, when I went through the comprehensive plans and goals and objectives, I went through each one of them, and I can sufficiently feel that they meet all the criteria for that. With their Soil and Water doing the environmental study and signing off on that and saying that it's adequate with their manure management plan that they have. I know there was some questions about runoff, and I think that's kind of addressed. Future expansion, that would be up to the county's feedlot officer and the Soil and Water to take care of that. But I think as of right now, for what they're looking for expansion, yes, it is not in conflict with the comprehensive plan and water plan in the county. Does anybody else have anything to add to question 5?
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Mr. Stish.
Yeah, really is a very sensitive site. I'm sure you'd rather have it on a nice flat spot too. But with good practices and, recognizing that the river is right there and that it is an impaired waterway, which has been improved over the years by, as Shannon mentioned, a lot of public input as to energies, plans, dollars, if you, way you answered the questions, it sounds like you've got practices in place that could offset any, runoff potential. Not stacking on site without a cover, just watching where the water goes. So I think, yes, we could answer that question to the yes because of that.
Okay. You guys ready for the vote? Vote on the criteria questions? Okay. So question 1, the use will not put an excessive burden on roadways, utilities, and public facilities such as parks and schools. Brent?
Yes.
Dave Stish? Marvin?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Clint, Catherine, myself is yes. Question 2, the request will not be detrimental to the use and enjoyment of the other property in the immediate vicinity for the purposes already permitted, nor impede the normal and orderly development and improvement of surrounding vacant property for uses predominant in the area. Dave Stish?
Yes.
Marvin?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Myself, Clint, Catherine's yes. Brent?
Yes.
Okay. Question 3, the use in the opinion of the planning commission is reasonably related to the existing land use and the environment. Groundwater, surface water, and air quality in the surrounding area will not be adversely affected by the proposed use. Marvin?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Myself, Clint, Catherine's yes. Brent?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Question 4, the use is consistent with the purposes of the zoning ordinance and the purposes of the zoning district in which the applicant intends to locate the proposed use. John?
Yes.
Myself, Clint, Catherine's yes. Brent?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Marvin?
Yes.
Question 5, the use is not in conflict with the comprehensive plan or the water plan of the county. Myself, Clint, Catherine is yes. Brent?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Marv?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Okay, so it looks like we answered all the questions in the affirmative. Somebody want to make a motion to either recommend approval or recommend denial?
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Brent.
I would make a recommendation that we approve this and send it to the county board for the March 28th, 2023 meeting.
Okay, is there a second?
Chair, I'd like to second that.
Okay, motion made and seconded. For recommended of approval to the county board. Okay, so all in favor say aye. So we'll go down, Clint, Catherine, myself as aye. Brent,
Aye.
Dave Stish,
Aye.
Marvin Treadle,
Aye.
John.
Aye.
Motion passes. So this will be in front of the county board on March 28th. They'll do their either approval or denial. They have the final say. If you guys have any questions between now and then, contact Land Services, either Amy or her staff, and they'll help you out with whatever you guys need. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, good luck with it.
Okay, give me a second. Okay, next up on our agenda is John and Laura Pansky. If you guys would please come up to the podium. John and Laura Pansky, 15287 Twin Lakes Road, Little Falls, Minnesota. Application for an interim use permit to allow a home decor shop located in the point of northwest quarter of southwest quarter, section 16, township 129, range 30, Pike Creek Township. If you guys would please state your name for the record.
John Pansky.
Laura Pansky.
Okay. So I guess at this time, Amy, you ready for the staff report?
I am, Mr. Chair. Again, this is an application to establish a home extended business located in section 16 of Pike Creek Township. The ordinance reference for this request is 604.8, and that does require an interim use permit for home extended businesses. Here is a plat map of Pike Creek Township, and the red dot is the location of the parcel. And then here's the interim use permit request received from the applicant. And the site drawing also provided by the applicant. Then here's some aerial photos of the property. The applicant owns and lives on this 5.09 acre parcel in Pike Creek Township. The parcel is serviced by Twin Lakes Road, which is County State Aid Highway 22, which is a paved County State Aid highway. The applicant purchased the property in 2007 and built a home in 2008. In 2018, a permit was granted to construct a 28 by 32 shed for personal storage. And then here again is the site photo with the home and the detached garage. The applicant is requesting an interim use permit to establish a home decor shop within the existing detached shed. The proposed hours of operation would be Wednesday through Sunday between the hours of 9 o'clock a.m. and 7 o'clock p.m. up to 6 days per month. While some on-site parking is available, the applicant has spoken with the Pike Creek Township Board regarding the use of the right-of-way of 153rd Street for excess vehicle parking. The township has given written permission to utilize 153rd Street for overflow parking. And this, I believe, was also included in your packet. And then here's an aerial photograph of the parcel and then the location of 153rd Street. No bathroom facilities are proposed at this time. If a guest would need to use the restroom, the bathroom in the home would be made available. Signage would be put out on the days the shop is open and removed at shop close. And then here are the performance standards for the home extended businesses. That was included in your packet, and I have them here, but I won't go through them. The surrounding land use consists of agricultural property with rural homesteads, and the nearest residence is approximately 350 feet to the north. There are 6 residences on the south side of 153rd Street, within the first half mile east. And so again, here's that figure showing the nearest home to the north, and then the development on 153rd. The applicable comprehensive plan goals and objectives is agriculture, goal A1, goal A1, goal A2, and then under A2, objective 1. And then local economic development, goal C1, objectives 1 and 8. Goal C2, objective 1 and 2, 7 and 19. And then this is just a reminder to the Planning Commission that this is an interim use permit, so a sunset date must be conditioned. 22 notices were sent. An email from the county engineer was received prior to the public hearing, and I'll read that. The comments were that parking should be off of the county highway right of way. And then if the business alters current traffic conditions, an in-depth review for turn lanes may be required at a future date. And then here are your interim use criteria. Questions, Mr. Chair?
Yeah, thank you very much, Amy. Okay, at this time, I'll just clarify, you guys, John and Laura, you stated in your application that your end date you're fine with, you'd like it when you guys no longer own the property, is that correct?
That is correct.
That's what you wanted to do for an end date, okay. Okay, did you have anything that you'd like to add, or clarify from what Amy said in her staff report? Otherwise,
I think it was described very well.
okay. So at this time, I'll ask anybody on the planning commission, if you have any questions for the applicants, please do so now.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Brent.
just a couple questions. One was on days of operation. I think I read in here Wednesday through Saturday and saw that. Another part was it was only going to be operational 6 days a month. Is that right?
It's a great question. Many men have that same question. The nature of the business is an occasional store, so it's going to operate occasionally, not every Wednesday through Sunday, just a few times per month.
Okay, and that's what I wanted to clarify.
Not to exceed 6 days per month, yes.
I see. Okay, but it would operate any one of those days, Wednesday
Yep.
through Saturday.
That is correct.
Sunday.
Through Sunday.
To clarify, Brent, that was Sunday.
Sunday, okay. And the only other concern that I had was reference to allowing folks to use the restroom in the house for events. Is there been any thought about having a satellite or some service having something available for you there for that? I mean.
Yep, in the original application there, we have stated if we offer refreshments or so forth, we would have a portable toilet on site with professional services.
Okay.
But other than that, if no food or beverages were provided, we didn't have any intentions at this time, since it's just going to be an occasional retail store, not a place for dining. But there's always those emergencies when a child comes along and
Sure.
they need a bathroom, so you got to provide something.
Yeah, and that's my concern, when you start having the general public flowing into your home and your driveway, and there's gonna be a need for that, and you might be surprised at how often that will come up, and are you really gonna want folks, going into your home?
Yeah, that's something we considered, and we looked into a local sanitary service to have one of those provided, if recommended.
Okay.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Chair,
Go ahead, John.
I share Brent's concerns or questions there around the restroom, but can you pull the site map up again?
Which one?
The aerial shot?
Of their site.
When you talk about the yard being able to handle 30 vehicles up and down the driveway in the grass?
Yeah, both sides of the grass, diagonal parking on the grass.
Okay, thank you.
So to clarify that a little bit, I did measure it on Beacon. They're pretty close on their estimation of parking 30 cars. Where I measured off and figured out where I would park cars, I think that's a pretty fair estimate from what I measured.
Thank you.
Yeah, and the reason we thought of 30 cars is there's an occasional store just down the road from us that they haven't exceeded the 30-car limit, but just to be safe, we want to reach out to the township ahead of time to let them know what our intentions were. That's why we have the signed supporting document going along with it.
Are you using social media for marketing? Here's the occasional openings, here's how are you alerting folks?
Yeah, the social media, but the opening dates haven't been set yet. We're waiting for the interim use permit.
Understood. Thank you. When you do that, are you able to collect reservations through a channel? Are you planning to do that?
Not at this time. There was the thought of having ideas of, drawings to have special invitations for people to kind of bring new excitement. As far as reservations, not at this time.
Maybe not reservations, but click
Time
the
slots.
I'm attending button or, yeah.
No, not at this time.
Okay. And I think that I'm asking the question because it ties back to the facilities. If you know you're going to have 30, 40, 50 people there and you just have the ability to plan for it, especially if you're doing things via social where you have the ability to add yep, I'll be there or I'll be there between this time frame, it might give you a heads up.
Yeah.
Or get your bathroom ready and cleaned.
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead, Brent.
Just a follow-up question for clarification. It appears as though this will be maybe a tag team operation, or is there employees planned, or can you give me an idea of the number of folks that might be working there outside of yourselves?
My wife, myself, and our 2 children kind of helping here and there, not competing with any stores in town.
Okay.
But hopefully, eventually, the end goal would be to grow so large that we grow out of our property and move to a store in the city. But to keep things within our means, start out small, build up a following, and not make this permanent. Hopefully, grow to the point where we'd have a store in town.
Sure.
And then employees.
Sure. Thank you.
But as far as this application is concerned, it's family business.
Marvin?
Mr. Chair, so a couple of questions. You're going to have individuals coming to your store here. Are the items going to be shipped to your home, or are they going to be shipped to the people's home? And that would be trucks coming in and out, vans coming in and out. And if that is the case through your home, how frequent or do you expect that to happen?
Deliveries would be made to our home. People would come to our property and then leave with the item. At this time, there is no intentions of online sales, but if the demand is there, that could potentially happen. Then with the online sale happening, our preliminary thoughts are we would take those items into town and have them shipped, not picked up at our property.
So,
And then the frequency of packages being delivered is 1 to 2 deliveries per week, and nothing semi-freight delivery. Everything we have requested to be delivered via UPS, FedEx, box truck style.
Okay, thank you. And the next comment I was going to make, we've offered a few CUPs to their neighboring business. I believe it's just the next mile down. Here it was like a sawmill. There was also a fashion store or whatever, and
Yep.
that's only.
Yes, sir.
And then also I think there's a meat lot.
Yep.
So it's starting to be a little bit more commercialized out in the country
Yep.
there. But
Yeah, Pike Creek Township has an increasing tax base.
yes. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Stish?
Wow.
Gotta have something.
Wow, thanks for calling on it. I was almost falling asleep there. No, not really. It's very interesting. Applaud you for thinking out of the box and doing this. But I do have some concerns. I've got quite a bit of experience with parking cars at a place that attracts people. And I believe that you could fit 30 cars on your property if they had guidance, if they were allowed to park on their own. 30 spaces turn into 10 spaces really quick. And so I guess my question there is several questions. It almost sounds like it's a kind of by appointment. You're going to know people are coming?
Yeah, there's going to be scheduled dates and times that it's going to be open, and then it will be staffed by my wife and myself.
I guess maybe rephrase the question. Could you do it by appointment only so that you know that there's 10 cars coming in? Oh, they can just park themselves. Or no, well, it looks like a busy day today, there might be 30 coming. I'd better be out there parking them, and will there be somebody to do that? And then, your request about parking on the township road. Have you thought about how they're gonna park over there? Will one of you be there to guide them, make sure they don't park in front of a mailbox or in a neighbor's driveway or too close to the county road, or who's gonna help them across the road? Will they have children? Will they have strollers? Will they have pets? All those things kind of get out of control. And, it's not just a direct walk across from the township road to your driveway. You've got to walk on the shoulder of the road at least. And then again, even with the best parking plans and even somebody monitoring it, people have a tendency to, thank you, to come by and see, oh, that looks full, I'll just park here on the town or on the county road or wherever else they can. People are pretty innovative, and they need direction to make your plan work, if you have a plan. So, I would, I would not be able to vote for this with township road parking. I think that's very hazardous for your customers. In your business plan, your mission statement is provide customers a unique premium merchandise, exceptional customer service, relaxing, engaging shopping environment. Walking across a busy road isn't that. And it's not safe, and I'm sure you're going to need extra liability insurance because of this operation, and your insurance provider would probably not be very much in approval of that plan either. So it's a lot that I just threw out at you in as very little time as I could.
No, I did my best trying to remember them, and I'll do my best to answer them in the order that you made the
Okay.
questions.
Thank you. If you don't get one of them, I'll remind you.
Okay, so to make the appointments, no, at this time, no appointments. All the studies we've done in all the surrounding areas, appointments hasn't been anything that has been requested from any of the other places. It is a good question to ask. In the future, we could do that, and I feel that may become something that we would approach if the base of people, customer base grows to that level. At this time, we have no intentions of adding that unless it is recommended by the planning committee. The staff needed to do this. We have a really nice software system set up where the building will be stocked with merchandise. We have a really nice POS system, so it doesn't take a lot of people inside the building to run, just one person to run a cash register. It is a small building, about 800 square feet, 28 by 32, so to have more than one person in there to run it really isn't necessary. Everything's bar-coded, no calculator type stuff. It's all self-checkout, almost like Walmart, but it would be attended by my wife or myself. As far as parking goes, during those heavy times, my son, 10 years old, not promoting child labor, but he's a hell of a worker. He would be out there with me, helping me. And I don't know if you've been to the pumpkin patches around here, but there's children out there helping with adults present, not out there left alone. Definitely not guiding traffic across the road. That would be done by an adult only. The reason we reached out to the township for permission for overflow parking is we don't know. Is this gonna turn in on a Black Friday? We only hope. If that does happen, we would move out of this site in the town rather quickly. But before it gets to that, we just want to have a contingency plan in place where if we do exceed those 30 cars or the poorly parked 20, we have township permission. 2 reasons, just to get their blessing on what we're doing. We don't intend on having a large increase of heavy vehicle traffic. These are women, small cars, hopefully vans with lots of room to buy stuff, but not going to increase any wear and tear on the roads. And support from the township was not to block any road traffic, and in our report that we provided to the township, it states in there not to block any roadways or any emergency vehicles, so much like an auction does now. So when there's auctions all across the Morrison County area, there's parking on the roads. So our intentions are to replicate that. We don't have complete control. It's not valet parking. It's going to be honor system, common sense parking. That's what we're intending to have done there. As far as guiding people across the road, I see that, I don't have the crystal ball, but that would be very few and far between. Hopefully it does get to that level, but then we'd move into town. What did I miss?
Oh, I think you covered it pretty well. Yeah. But common sense needs guidance.
Yeah, I get that common sense is not
Yeah.
common anymore.
Yeah. But things will show up that
Yep,
won't
yep.
fit, like a big truck with a trailer. That'll happen.
And that's the other thing I forgot, I apologize. The other thing was for our township improvement, our patrol. We didn't want to have an event, and they're doing patrol that day, grading the road,
Oh,
or snow plowing. So the reasons to have that permission is we are going to provide a list to the township. Can you hear me okay? Okay, all right, we're gonna provide a list to the township of the sale dates, just so we can make sure that they're not going to be blading road that day in that area. Because when they do blade road, they put the berm in the middle, and if we have cars half parked on the road, a berm in the middle is gonna impede traffic.
yeah, again.
Tried to think of everything, but I'm sure
Yeah.
there's something.
Yeah. You do have 5 acres of property. You don't have
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
parking places now.
Right.
You maybe could get more parking places by being creatively moving a tree here and there.
Yep. And there has been some improvements from that last aerial photo
Okay.
to some of that.
Sure. All right.
But
Yeah,
we
that's
do
the
wanna-
end
we
of
do
my
wanna provide
questions.
the enjoyable experience by not clearing it.
It's hard to have everything.
Blend.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Okay, I just have a couple things. One is, seems like we get a lot more of these home endeavors lately, and I've been for every one of them so far. My only question is, and concern moving forward with all these home extended businesses out in ag is, and I know you grew up on a farm, so what happens in 2 years, somebody wants to put a hog barn up in the field to the northwest of you, and they're 200 feet short, and they come for a variance, you're gonna be the first one in there complaining that you don't want hog barn smell because, you know, there's something, you don't have to answer that, I'm just.
No, I'll answer it.
No, but anyways, to get back to the parking, what Dave is talking about across the road and things, to be real consistent, we had one last year, we didn't allow no parking on the road. It was a big problem. But when you look at what our standards are to be able to do a home extended business in the county, in ag zoning, we have a list of these performance standards that you have to meet. And looking through them, you meet all of them except for the parking thing, okay? So H is parking for employees and customers must be provided off-street, okay? So for us to be, I don't even think we have to condition it, it just, you can't park on the street. That's on 22 or 153rd, okay? Because if you did, then you're breaking what your contract is for this permit per se, okay? Now, you can't help it if somebody parks there, but I wouldn't put anything in any of my advertising or anything like that on parking, okay? You just can't do it. That's huge. 22 Twin Lakes Road there, it's got curves, the hill both ways. That's a real bad spot for people to even cross the road. I hate that. I drive that a lot. But anyways, just to clarify, so I think to me, the parking across on the gravel road, it's a non-issue for me because it can't happen. Otherwise, you're in violation with if we would grant this permit, that's one of the performance standards that have to be met for you to be able to have this permit. So thank you for doing all your work, talking to the township, doing all that. That was great. Most people ain't gonna do that ahead of time. But it can't happen, so. And then we gotta be consistent on how we police this, and,
Mr. Chair,
go ahead.
maybe just an observation and a question. So my observation is many small stores in Little Falls, Piers, the surrounding area, don't have 30 cars at one location or inside a business to begin with. Two, you got an 800 square foot, your inventory is going to take up some of that. You got a 32 by 28 garage. You're not going to have 30 people inside that garage at any one time. So I think this whole 30 car thing might be just a little too much to really discuss. I agree with fellow board members about having on-site parking and off-road parking for a lot of reasons. And as somebody starting out in a business, you might understand that. You don't want liability, and people can do the darndest things. Maybe as a condition, we might say on-site parking. I already mentioned the one about the porta potty, having some place for somebody to relieve themselves. You start to get folks there, you don't want to, with just a few people, be sidetracked and pulled away, and all of a sudden your inventory goes gone because you're escorting somebody into your house, or somebody's in your house and they take something from your house. You might want to think about that, and I guess I would condition that as part of this as well. And the end date, I think, has been discussed by Clint to go along with this, and that's all I've got to say.
Okay. And I think your 30 cars, what you're alluding to is if you have a special day.
At one heck of a turnout.
Yep, you don't have one heck of a turnout. So I guess you either got to find more parking or you find a neighbor's field or something and cart them over there. That'd be my recommendation. But anyways, anybody else have anything? We're open at the public comment at this time. So I'll open at the public comment. If anybody has any public comment, please go up to the podium at this time. Any public comment? Any public comment? Hearing no public comment, we'll close this portion of the meeting. For the public comment, it'll be closed. Anybody else have anything else on the board or ready to go through the criteria questions? Yeah.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Dave.
Just like to add that perhaps, just for your benefit, that in your advertising that you might warn people that it's no on-road parking, that it's only off-road parking in your lot. That should protect you and protect your customers, because they do get creative. Okay, that's it, Mr. Chair.
Okay, we'll go through the criteria questions here. Okay, question one. We'll start with Dave Stish. The use will not put an excessive burden on roadways, utilities, and public facilities such as parks and schools.
No, I think the applicant answered basically all of the criteria questions very well, other than, including the off-street parking on it. But no, as long as they stick with the off-street parking, they won't add an excessive burden.
Anybody else have anything else to add to question one? If not, we'll move to question two, and that'll be for Marvin. The request will not be detrimental to the use and enjoyment of the other property in the immediate vicinity for the purposes already permitted, nor impede the normal and orderly development and improvement of surrounding vacant property for uses predominant in the area.
Yes, it's a rural area, and we discussed this in detail. They got parking up to 30 cars they can handle, and which probably won't happen. Deliveries will be made probably only twice a week at most. No semis for deliveries. We have a couple other businesses right in a rural area within a mile away that's quite similar to this, so it will not impede anything of the rural area and surrounding area here.
Anybody else have anything to add to question two? If not, we'll move to question three. This will be for John. The use and opinion of the Planning Commission is reasonably related to the existing land use and the environment. Groundwater, surface water, and air quality in the surrounding area will not be adversely affected by this proposed use.
We didn't see any impacts in any of the reports, or the staff reports, or any of the comments. And like Dave mentioned here, we did answer. You answered all of the criteria questions, and you're meeting all the goals and objectives. So we're good there.
Yeah, and I think to go along with what John said, with the way this operation is, there is not going to be it's already a building that's there. There ain't gonna be extra runoff and it's not like you're producing something. It's just retail sales. It's not manufacturing or anything like that. So I don't see where the only thing possibly be is if you start tearing up your lawn. That's your problem, I guess. But that's probably the only thing. But other than that, yeah, I agree. Anybody else have anything for question 3?
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
I'd just add that, with a good screening of trees on both sides, all through their property, that, that'll buffer any noise going to the neighbors. And screen them from any, seeing really any difference at all in the neighborhood. So that, for answering number 2 and number 3.
Okay. Okay, we'll move on to question 4. That's for myself. The use is consistent with the purposes of the zoning ordinance and the purposes of the zoning district in which the applicant intends to locate the proposed use. Most definitely, I think it is consistent. When we look through our performance standards, they meet all of them. We talked about the parking. That was maybe an only issue. We talked through that. But when I read through all the performance standards, they meet each one of them. It's a small family business run just by the husband and wife and the children. I think we allow that, more than allow that in ag zoning. So, yes, I do think that it's consistent with our zoning ordinance. Anybody have anything else to add to question 4?
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Dave.
Answer for both 4 and 5 is that I think they also have a very realistic look at what they can do in that site. That at some point they're planning to move to town and hoping to move to town, I assume, that your business is expanded to that point. So a lot of times we don't get that from other applicants.
Okay, we'll go to question 5. That'd be for Brent. The use is not in conflict with the comprehensive plan or the water plan of the county.
I don't believe that it's in conflict with the comp plan or the water plan. Again, I would just emphasize that maybe we condition this with a porta potty and garbage for folks that might be there. People bring things with them, including what's in their bodies or what they're carrying. So a lot of times, if you don't have that, they'll continue to do whatever it is they do. So to make sure that we're not in conflict with that, I think those 2 things would take care of it.
Okay. Anybody else have anything to add? Okay, before we vote on this, kind of talked about a condition maybe putting on as about having a porta potty. You guys be fine with that if we put a condition, you have to have a porta potty on site?
Yep, no concerns.
Okay. Anybody else have any other?
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Dave.
I have a little trouble conditioning that, and they seem like pretty common sense folks, and that when they, at first they might need that, not need that for the first 2 or 3 months or 6 months, or I don't know. But it is a good condition, but I don't
our
know if,
intentions were supply and demand. If the demand is there, we would supply it. If we supply it and there's no demand there, it's less of a positive economic impact we can provide.
but I do agree, having them in your house, you won't like that.
No.
But that's my only comment on that.
Okay. So I think we'd do that condition. And then, as we're voting, think about that condition with the porta potty, and then also the end date until John or Laura sell the property. That's what the end date would be for this permit. So keep that in mind while we're voting on these questions. Anything else? You guys have anything else to add?
You did mention about the hog facility coming in, and I said I would answer it, and I just want to be honest with you. I grew up on a small dairy farm. So did my wife, Laura. And then when we looked for a place to build our home, we came from the country and we're going to stay in the country. But we chose the site where we built this home because it wasn't production agricultural land. We're not going to destroy production agricultural land to plop a house in the middle of. So we are a guest in the agricultural community. So if someone does want to use the surrounding area for which it was originally intended for, well, I have no reason to other than support it.
The only reason I ask that, because I'm going to ask that every single time one of these come forward. So I'm going to be consistent. So, okay. So we're going to go through these criteria questions again. Keep in your head that the condition as you're voting for porta potties and for the end date. So, question 1. The use will not put an excessive burden on roadways, utilities, and public facilities such as parks and schools. Dave?
Yes.
Marvin?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Myself, Clint Catherine's yes. Brent?
Yes.
Okay. Question 2, the request will not be detrimental to the use and enjoyment of the other property in the immediate vicinity for the purposes already permitted, nor impede the normal and orderly development and improvement of surrounding vacant properties for uses predominant area. Marvin?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Myself, Clint Catherine's yes. Brent?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Question 3, the use and opinion of the planning commission is reasonably related to the existing land use and environment. Groundwater, surface water, and air quality in the surrounding area will not be adversely affected by the proposed use. John?
Yes.
Myself, Clint Catherine's yes. Brent?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Marvin?
Yes.
Question 4, the use is consistent with the purposes of the zoning ordinance and the purposes of the zoning district in which the applicant intends to locate the proposed use. Myself, Clint Catherine's yes. Brent?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Marvin?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Question 5, the use is not in conflict with the comprehensive plan or water plan of the county. Brent?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Marvin?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Myself, Clint Catherine's yes. Okay, all the questions were answered in affirmative, so would somebody want to make a motion to recommend approval or denial?
The end date, do we have that as a condition?
What's it? Yeah,
Oh, we do, okay.
what's that? The porta potty, yeah.
Do we have the end date as a condition? We've already stated that,
Yeah.
okay.
Well, you'll make your motion with the conditions.
Okay.
Whoever makes the motion.
And that condition is that as long as they own the property, correct? Okay.
So you made the motion, Dave?
With that, as a condition, I'd move that we'd recommend this for approval to the Morrison County Commissioners.
So that was for the porta potty and the end date.
That wasn't in my motion, the porta potty.
Oh, you want to add it?
I sure would if that's what everybody wants.
I think so.
Okay, I'll add that.
Okay, is there a second?
I would second that, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Brent, is there a motion made and seconded to request or make a recommendation to the county board for approval with the condition of a porta potty on site and the end date when they sell the property? All in favor say aye. Brent?
Aye.
Dave?
Aye.
Marvin?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
And myself, Clint Catherine's aye, so motion passes. The only thing I got on here that's a little weird is the county board meeting date is wrong. So that was the 28th? Okay, so we're recommending approval for this. This will go in front of the commissioners on March 28th. They'll decide on that. You can go to the meeting if you want. Don't have to, but if you have any questions between now and then or even after that, please call Amy or anybody, her staff in their office, and they'll definitely help you guys out. So thank you for putting together a nice application, and good luck in your endeavors.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck to you.
Okay. Next one on the docket here is Morrison County Public Works. Okay, so we got Morrison County Public Works, 17502 Iris Road, Little Falls. Application to amend the existing conditional use permit for the solid waste management facility located in point of section 23, 25, and 26, Township 40, Range 32, Little Falls Township. You guys, please state your name for the record, it'd be great.
Jeff Blair, Little Falls Waste Management of the Morrison County Landfill.
Tony Hennon, Morrison County Public Works Director.
Okay. So Amy, you ready for the staff report?
I am, Mr. Chair. Again, this is an application to amend the current conditional use permit for a solid waste management facility. This is located in sections 23, 25, and 26 of Little Falls Township. Section 604.5 of the Morrison County Land Use Control Ordinance requires conditional use permits for landfills, and 609.5 also requires that in the manufacturing and industry zoning district. Here's a plat map of Little Falls Township, and the red dot is the location of the property. And then here's the conditional use permit request received from the applicant. And also some site drawings too, provided by the applicant. And then here is an aerial photograph with all of the parcels included in yellow and blue. And then some oblique imagery. The Morrison County Solid Waste Management Facility and Gravel Pit is operating under a conditional use permit granted by Little Falls Township. That CUP was granted on February 6, 1995. Since that time, Little Falls Township no longer administers a zoning ordinance, so Morrison County has zoning jurisdiction within the unincorporated areas of Little Falls Township. In 2013, a request to amend the existing conditional use permit was made to include additional acreage in the conditional use permit and address antiquated conditions, and that amendment was granted. So the current conditional use permit contains 3 conditions. One is to maintain the existing 300-foot tree buffer on the north and west property line of the southwest quarter of Section 23, Township 40, Range 32 West. 2, solid waste management facilities shall operate under an approved MPCA solid waste permit. And 3, to report to the Little Falls Township Board when a landfill permit application is made or modified. Under the Morrison County Land Use Control Ordinance, gravel pits are not permitted through a conditional use permit. A land use permit is required, and the Public Works Department has a permit for the gravel operation located on the site. Therefore, the gravel pit operations cannot be addressed and or considered within this CUP amendment. The facility is currently undergoing submittals for a renewal of their 10-year permit from the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. Evidence of local use permitting is required as part of that application. Within the MPCA application, cells 7 through 9 have been redesigned to allow additional capacity, and those were included in the application drawings. This design has been reviewed by the MPCA Environmental Review Unit, and it was determined the current environmental assessment worksheet is sufficient for the expansion of capacity. Per Minnesota Statute 7035-2815 Subpart 5C, a 200-foot buffer between the fill area and the property line must be maintained. By operation of the conditional use permit, a 300-foot buffer is required. The Public Works Department is requesting to amend the language of that condition to read, any new fill area at the facility must be located at least 200 feet from the nearest property line. This modification to the local permit would be consistent with state law. I just want to take this moment to remind the Planning Commission, this is for a CUP amendment. The scope of this is very, very narrow. This is what you're considering. This is the only thing. So just wanted to make that clear so you can focus on that. And then here is a copy of that statute citation. The facility has a 21-year solid waste disposal capacity. The facility accepts approximately 40,000 ton of solid waste and 10,000 cubic yards of demolition debris each year. The facility also accepts residentially generated recycling, and a household hazardous waste collection facility also is located at the site. The household hazardous waste is prepared for shipment and is sent with a transporter for disposal off-site. The facility accepts loads from self-hauling individuals and licensed solid waste haulers, and it is open Monday through Saturday of each week. Pursuant to the Morrison County Solid Waste Ordinance, all solid waste generated within Morrison County is delivered to the facility, and the facility has an MPCA-approved industrial solid waste management plan, which allows the facility to handle the industrial waste disposal needs within the county. The applicant also carries out the groundwater contamination remediation activities associated with the old closed landfill, including monitoring wells and land application of groundwater. So this facility fronts County State Highway 35, and the surrounding parcels are agricultural and residential in nature. Morrison County Public Works has an approved solid waste management plan that addresses in detail the solid waste disposal needs of the community and the goals associated with solid waste management. The applicable comprehensive plan goals and objectives is transportation, infrastructure, and public facilities, Goal E3, objectives 1, 2, and 3. Local economic development, Goal C2. 50 notices were sent, and no comment was received prior to this hearing tonight. And then here are your CUP criteria questions, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Amy. Would applicants have anything to add or clarify?
Mr. Chair, I believe Amy did a fantastic job there. As everyone's aware, the Morrison County landfill is a fabulous asset to our community. Provides economical means to dispose of your waste. If you review some of your neighboring counties, you'll see that their tipping fees or their waste disposal fees are considerably higher than ours. By considering amending this condition, it'll allow us to do a little bit of expansion and gain some efficiencies inside our facility, provide some additional capacity for continued use and continued economic means of waste disposal here for Morrison County.
Okay, anybody on the board have anything, questions? John?
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, John.
so it references going 300 feet, a 300-foot tree buffer on the north and west property line, and we're talking about changing that to 200 feet from the nearest property. What's the actual distance and change associated with the request? Like, what's the total feet we're changing here?
100 feet.
Okay. Because the tree line is on the property line?
Correct.
Okay.
But if you go to the aerial, you'll see there's a tree line on both sides of the property, to the north and to the south of the east-west line there.
Do you want that one, or do you want?
Why don't you, I provided Amy with some additional slides just in case there was some extra aerials or anything we needed. Yeah, why don't you pull those up, it might help. Scroll down, I think, to the third one, so a nice aerial.
There?
One more. There you go. So you can see there, we have a partial tree buffer along our northern border, and then the additional tree buffers on the neighboring property to the north. That outline there in the black is the proposed redesign, which would encroach us into that 200 feet to align with state statute.
The other area that is graded there in gravel is essentially the old design, and the black line is the new fill area.
So that would be your 100-foot difference that you're referring to.
Understood. That's where I was just trying to make complete sense.
And
Thank you.
You can see part of that is trees that will be removed, part of it will be field.
Okay.
Good. Yeah, Mr.
Anything
Chair.
else, John?
No, sir.
Okay. Dave?
A lot of black lines there. Could you maybe point
I can
that
get up
out,
and point.
which black lines you're talking about?
Absolutely. You could, well, either way, or Amy, do you have your cursor?
Yeah.
So we'll start there. That is our solid waste, our line facility. That's the portion that we're referring to, and the expansion or the redesign inside of our re-permit application. Now, the other black box to the bottom, right there, that's our demo footprint. We noted there was expansion to our demo facility that doesn't encroach on any of the boundaries. The rest of the black line, that's just our existing property line, just a different way to highlight that to differentiate from the neighboring properties.
So could you point out exactly where the 100-foot change is?
Right here is your existing design. This 100-foot is the difference. Is what
Okay.
we requested.
All right, thank you.
Anybody else with questions? Marvin?
I'm assuming when you said efficiencies, just more area to store. Am I correct by that?
Absolutely. When you look at a landfill, essentially you're looking at a basin. So by having a little bit additional width, we're gaining area in the middle, which is where you can store your solid waste. So by having this redesign, jutting it out a little bit to the east and then to the north, we're expanding our capacities, and that's gaining you some additional years for this facility.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Dave.
Clarification on a couple things in the staff report here. On the 2013 findings of facts, one of my first board meetings as a part of the Planning Commission at that time. So I do recall that a bit. In that application, or in that finding of fact, it was stated that it was a 20-year plan, accepting 28,000 tons of solid waste and 10,000 yards of demo. Okay, then I look on Morrison County Planning Commission, yeah, I think the staff report, yep. There's a statement in there that the facility has a 21-year solid waste disposal capacity, 40,000 tons of solid waste per year. So that was an increase from 28,000 to 40,000. And in 10 years, you gained, I mean, it should, if there was 20 years back then, it would be 10 years now. Now it's 21 years. Does that 21 years include what you gain from this 100 feet, or what does that do?
Yeah, you can take it.
Well, the thing is that what we have multiple things and reasons for that. One of them is the additional redesign of the cell. As it moves to the north, landfills are like a football cross-section. As you stretch it out, the ends are really inefficient. You have the subbase and the cover, you don't have a lot of capacity because of the slopes in the cover. And you get the meat of it is where you get the capacity. So that's where we get about 600,000 cubic yards of airspace. And then the other thing is that from that time, we've added additional changes to operations. We have high compaction wheels on the compactor. We leachate recirculation. We're one of the first 2 facilities in the state of Minnesota approved by the MPCA to do that, where we take the wastewater from the landfill and push it back in and recirc. And through all of those things, it allows the landfill to landfill airspace just to last longer through various efficiencies in operations.
So is this 21-year statement, is that
Well,
with
that
this,
factors
or
in-
is that what you're at right now, or?
I can take it, Jeff. So in the 2013 application, what you were looking at was a projection. All those projections have built-in scales, anticipating community growth, additional waste being produced. So when you review I have some additional data that I didn't submit in there, we just pulled it just in case. But back in 2012 on that design, the ultimate capacity, or the total space that you could landfill, was about 3.2 million yards. And at that time, there was about 2.3 million yards remaining, or space available. So at that time, that's where you were getting about 20 years worth of capacity. Now, as the landfill sits without the redesign, we're sitting at about 1.8 million. So it's about 500,000, 600,000 capacity that was used. So that's roughly a 10-year life. So with our proposed redesign and expanding it to the north and a little bit to the east there to, as Jeff mentioned, increase our capacity in the center, our ultimate design capacity, or the whole design of that facility, moves up to about 3.8 million cubic yards of capacity, and we would have a remaining airspace of about that 2.4 million yards of capacity. So that's where you're seeing very similar numbers by having that redesign and additional airspace available. We've now added those years of life to that facility. And as Jeff mentioned, he operates very efficiently. You know, as the manager of our landfill, Morrison County is very lucky to have Little Falls Waste. They're very, very stringent in their operations and making the most of our facility through compaction, through researching different technologies, using leachate, and going back to areas that may have settled and reopening them, and then providing more waste in there. So we continue to utilize all the space we can, because ultimately, you know, there's gonna be a time where we can no longer expand, and that's just the end of its life. So it's very important that we continue to be efficient in our operations. So, you know, kudos to Mr. Meyer and his company to really help our county out.
With this condition, what would you estimate the life of the landfill would be?
So that our projected is right around that 21
Okay.
years. Again, that's a projection, you know, that's looking at our current rates, roughly 40,000 tons of solid waste going into that portion of the facility. And then projection on top of that. Now, say we have a decrease in waste, you're be gaining years to your facility there, or if you see an increase, we've been seeing an influx of people outside the community move to Morrison County. Obviously, they're gonna generate more waste, which in turn increases your need for that facility. And at that time, you know, you'll have to essentially decrease your life expectancy.
So your number one goal is to process more Morrison County waste?
Absolutely.
You do allow other waste from other counties or other facilities?
Yes, we do.
And that obviously shortens the lifespan of your landfill.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's why, you're getting 100 feet closer to your neighbors. And part of that reason is because you're inviting trash from outside of the county.
What we're asking is to align with state statute.
Sure, I understand that.
The MPCA sets those guidelines, and they're one of the most stringent agencies in the whole United States. So to ask to align with that 200-foot offset is not an unreasonable request. And one of the reasons we take in outside waste from other counties is to subsidize our tipping fees. As I said, we're one of the most economical waste disposal sites really in the whole state of Minnesota. And the reason we're able to provide those kind of tipping fees to our residents is we do supplement our income or our revenues into that facility by accepting waste. And we do so, you know, very, very calculatedly, just to make sure that we have a good medium of where our tipping fees are at and still providing our residents with a nice facility for a long-term use.
Thank you for those explanations. But also before I sound off here, thank you for just the landfill. I mean, I store my garbage at home and recycling and bring it there when needed, you know, every 2 or 3 weeks, and I'm always greeted with efficient workers and a beautiful facility to go to, and it's only 10 miles away. It is a treasure in a way. Kind of a trashy one, but it is a treasure. Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead, Brent.
Just a follow-up, maybe Tony can answer this. End of life, at the 300 foot, the way it is now, end of life is reducing it to the 200 feet and going under state statute and being less restrictive, end of life.
By expanding out to that 200 foot and say we restricted it to the 300 as it currently sits, I don't have that calculation offhand. You're probably cutting off roughly 8 years would be my guess.
So you're extending it, potentially 8 years, hopefully.
Roughly, yeah.
By making this change, which hence is maybe the reason for your request.
Well, that's our request, and then just to align with state statute, you know, is a very important reason for us. We operate underneath the MPCA, so we like to make sure that our guidelines that we're following align as well.
Sure. Thank you.
Sir.
Any other questions from the board? If not, I'm going to move it to public comment. If there's any public comment, please go up to the podium and state your name for the record and say your piece.
Mr. Chair, Ron Miller, landowner to the north. I have, I guess, a couple questions. By expanding the pit, do we expand the risk? And you talk about, you know, we have greater densities, we have more compaction. Does that increase the risk to that bladder blow and possibly cause it to blow out and contaminate our groundwater? Does it increase the amount of risk to the pressure and the gases that are moving through the soil layers? So my concern is, yeah, we can expand this pit by another 100 feet. We can open up part of it, get it denser, get more pressure on it. But, you know, what are the risks? We've had you guys go out there and you drilled a bunch of holes to drain the methane off so it doesn't explode, which is good. But couldn't we be more efficient by capturing that methane rather than just letting it blow in the air? You know, you address how efficient you are, which is good. And my concern is also, you know, yeah, you allow other counties to bring their garbage in, but is that really wise? Yeah, it increases our revenue, but is that really wise? So, you know, I guess I'd like those questions answered. The other thing is, I guess with a green belt, you know, we see a lot of oak wilt in our woods there. And basically the green belt is our trees. You know, is there possibilities of the county putting if you look at that line up there, putting a green belt, you know, on their side? Because I don't know, you know, with that oak wilt and the amount of plastics in that landfill that come in there's a lot. And I know you can't help the wind and you try to mitigate the amount that blows. But if you look in the woods to the north there along our property line, I see you guys have guys come and pick it up, which we appreciate it, and try to keep that clean, which is good. And I know you can't control the wind no more than anybody else can, but so by establishing possibly a green belt in there, those oak trees that have that oak wilt and stuff are dying off, it'll keep it closer on the landfill's ground than blowing into the woods there. And we'd appreciate that, I guess. The other thing is down the road, we are planning on probably putting more manure storage, a barn in. By moving the landfill pit closer to the line, does that cause our facility to have to maintain a setback farther? Or are we still able, this isn't going to affect our setback for building a barn to the property, our south line, your north line? You know, if it is going to be causing us to have to not be able to utilize our property for our farming purposes, we would be opposed to it. But if it's not going to affect our facility and our business to expand, you know, we understand your business, and you have to do what all you can with the land you got. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, thank you, Ron.
Good evening, board members. My name is Jacob Caro. I wrote this down so I didn't forget much of it, but I'm here this evening to voice my opinion about the future expansion and/or its request to decrease its setback from my future southern border. My wife and I, Brooke, are the owners of Enchanted Dairy, which currently operates under a lease from Parkview Acres, which owns the land to the north. We believe that it is in our best interest that they keep the 300-foot wooded barrier to be maintained on their southern border so does it not infringe on our property and affect our future property's value. Brooke and I have the right to purchase this property in little more than 4 years, and the proposed expansion of cells 7, 8, and 9 would, decrease our property's value, we feel like. We have no doubt that owning the land with as much buried waste will, like I said, undeniably lower its property values, and especially with the future cell 9 encroaching even closer than it was proposed before. Is a concern of ours that the county could condemn our future property and majorly disrupt our family's ability to carry out future operations on this site. Parkview Acres has lost a fair chunk of land to the past to the county that had condemned it. This will bring doubt as to whether we want to invest in our future at this location if that were to happen. There is a significant amount of real estate investment on our behalf by buying Parkview Acres lands that border your properties. Not being able to pay off the debt will be the debt associated with that land and its improvements should the county condemn any purchase of Parkview Acres property would be detrimental to Brooke and I. I would like to propose, to the county commissioners to keep that 300-foot wooded barrier maintained along our southern border. There's usually minimal trash that blows into the surrounding woods for most of the year, barring any major wind event like Rhonda mentioned before that you just can't contain. There's nothing you can do about that. I personally worked with the management of the county, of the landfill and the county, Tony and the county, to be able to lay my manure hose across their property to get to our land to the south to be able to apply manure. And I greatly appreciate that. I do believe we have to work together going forward, as I have no intentions of moving my dairy operations unless forced to. So I would ask that the county commissioners grant the reduction, that they do not grant the reduction to the 200-foot setback variance and allow me, and if they do, allow me the same right in the future to have the same setback as they did the county. I would also recommend that the waste is only accepted from Morrison County, to reduce the expansion of this landfill and probably keep it around longer than the 21 years projected. It just makes sense to me that we keep it in our own county. Seeing those semis come over from other counties, it's, like you said, probably helps with the revenue, but at the same time, I don't like to see them out in the trash in my backyard. The one thing I would also recommend is that I would propose the commissioners or whoever does the tax assessments reevaluate our taxes. If this landfill is going to be coming closer and closer to my new property and other property owners around us, that it be evaluated as such. Because having that mountain of trash will no doubt devalue my future property and everyone else's, especially ours. One thing that is stated in their conditional use permit is that in the southwest section of section 23, township 40, range 42, that they keep a wooded border 300 feet on the north and west borders. Well, they actually own the entire mile, not just the southwest quarter. They own the southeast quarter too. And there's nothing stated in there, if they were to expand that way, that they keep the border along that area as well, because there's a lot of unused land over there that has not been used for trash burial. So if it states existing wooded barrier, you can see from cell 9 on the north end of their cell 9 to our south border, there is a small line of trees. Ron mentioned the same thing. I propose that we have the county plant a green barrier along all of cell 9 and reaching around their irrigator path. You can see it right up to the line of pines on our southern border of our field, just to prevent the trash from blowing into the farm and unintended events. It happens. Thank you for your consideration. That's all I have.
I'm Marv Miller, Mr. Chair and the board. I'd like to address, my wife and I, we meet right on the top northwest corner there of the landfill. Our land butts up to that. And so I have the privilege of going out, and I spend a lot of time up in the woods cutting trees or buckthorn, whatever up there. And so I do a fair amount of walking through that woods up there. And there is garbage pretty prevalent along that whole north side there. Granted, you can't stop the blowing or whatever. But does reducing the setback, is that gonna help clean it up, make it better? I don't think so. And so by encroaching on the property lines, I think that I'm not for that. Because Ron and I own the farm right now, the farmland along the whole north side. And then from the hill farm to the west, Teresa and I, we butt the corner of that, the county ground. And like I say, it's not a very pleasant thing to do. I mean, to go out there and see what's out there in that woods. And so I would not recommend expanding that or narrowing down that buffer zone. And then there is the pine tree border along part of the field up there. But now to that point coming out to the northeast that's open field. And there is no trees up in that area. That's on the county property. So it's basically open field. And if you expand to the northeast, you only get closer to where the end of the pine tree line ends and the open field and wide open. And so now you make a funnel right out into our field or out into the dairy. Where garbage or paper and plastic can blow, and we don't care if that's that. So if that tree line, to the north there, if that pine tree line could be expanded all the way along that north end of that field, that would help decrease the garbage route or the wind from blowing further out into our property to the north. So I'm not in favor of narrowing it down just because of a state statute. It is in place. I mean, we have the 300 foot, and that's not keeping the garbage back. Maybe we could do something to plant a green buffer zone, more trees along that north end to help get rid of or help stop some of that thing. I mean, you can only do so much to, on a windy day, they dump a load of paper. Seal it once a day at the end of the day, and so there isn't. We would like a wooded buffer to maintain or to help keep that to a minimum. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. My name is John Tice, Little Falls Township. You know, I was elected to the town board maybe 3 years before this was voted on 10 years ago. And the 300-foot barrier was put there to kind of buffer that edge, just like they're talking, you know? Everybody's unsure about the 200 feet, so, you know, we talk about garbage. Nobody wants a landfill in their backyard. Nobody wants out-of-town garbage coming in. Nobody wants a landfill in their backyard. But what we do with a landfill when we have it. Morrison County, Greater Morrison County landfill is very lucky to have this landfill that we got, you know? But it's what the landfill does to operate it. I've been in garbage for 35 years, and I understand it. It's my life. So compaction ratios, reiteration of leachate management and stuff like that, how well the line is, gas wells from the bottom, this is all stuff that Morrison County is going to do. But are Morrison County doing enough around the outer edges? If you go to some of the landfills that I've been with in my company over the last 35 years, they work on the outside. Millers are here saying, man, what are we going to do on that air if we go from 300 to 200? Well, I think airspace is a big thing. 8 years worth of county landfill is huge, if that's what it is. That's a ton of revenue for the county. And what are we going to do with our garbage? If we go 21 years and this thing locks up as a county, where are we going to go with it? We're going to ship it down to Polk County and burn it? Now your tipping rates go to 100, 120 tons and more, you know? So what can the county do if we're willing to go to 200 feet? What can we do on that edge? You know, it is. I mean, it's a tit for tat. They're scared of what's going to happen, and we should be concerned about what the outer edge of our landfill looks like. You know, I think with the money that we generate from out-of-town waste that nobody wants, but it's good money. You know, I mean, it's a monopoly. You can't have outside companies come in and pick up waste and not bring it to Morrison County. That's the thing. So they buy more to get it up here. So we're going to dump everything from Morrison County that were picked up, plus we're bringing it along, and we paid dearly for it. Let's use some of that money to do better on there, make them satisfied, and still gain our 8 years of airspace. You know, I think what they're looking for is a commitment on what we could do if we went to 200. And I don't know if we have that tonight. You know, so is this something that we commit on today? I know the MPCA, when's the question is, I think it was due in August, if I'm not mistaken, or something like that. It's going to have to act fast, you know. But we're going to get one shot to narrow that to 200, which is big for the county. But what's the county going to do for the opposing properties, which I think is a big thing. You know, it's something that it is the landfill's responsibility as the host township to make sure that Little Falls Township is protected and its constituents on the outer edge of this thing. So that's my input. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment at this time? Any other public comment? I guess I'll ask for the third and final time. Is there any other public comment? If not, we'll close this portion of the meeting to the public. Maybe Amy, you want to go through some of them questions and answer a few, and then probably the boys up front can answer a few of them.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I did jot down, and I think a lot of these are going to need to be answered by the applicants. The first one was as far as expansion of this, does that expand the risk, and the additional compaction and all that, and how that impacts the liner. And so I think that is the first question that we had.
Sure, yeah. The expansion to the north, it doesn't affect the risk. We have a consultant on board that designs our liners, and those are designed to handle these pressures, and then different ways to deal with, you know, Mr. Miller mentioned the gas. There are, you know, different options for capturing gas. The county has reviewed those in the past. We didn't find it economical. We also don't produce enough methane sometimes to make it economical. So at this point, methane capture isn't on our radar, but, you know, maybe if technology increases in the future, it could be. But for the liner itself, everything's designed by professional engineering consultants that are very familiar with the pressures inside a landfill and the operations. A little bit of the history, when we talk about risk, this landfill was started in about 1970 by the Area Council of Government, which is cities and townships. So essentially, everyone up and down the Trunk Highway 10 371 corridor had a piece of this, and they operated an unlined landfill. Obviously, they didn't have the regulations they do today, up until about the late 1980s. And then at that time, the county was essentially forced to take this facility over. So Morrison County bought the landfill from the townships in 1988 for $1. And that also included all the liabilities that went with it, the contaminated ground and groundwater underneath. Since we've had this facility in 1988, you've seen considerable groundwater cleanup and clarity since we've owned this facility. I think it would be very hard to argue that our track record says anything else. You can refer to MPCA, you can refer to our monitoring wells. We've done a considerable amount of cleanup, and we continue to make the groundwater in that area cleaner. So the risk, I don't see it's there. We're regulated by the MPCA, one of the most stringent in the whole United States, and we typically excel very well at meeting or exceeding their permit requirements.
Okay. Next one, there were several questions about the possibility of a vegetative buffer or tree buffer on the county land side and along that property line. And then I think referring to the image that you have up, that is the water remediation, the groundwater remediation area on the east side?
Correct. I'll let Jeff take this. He's very familiar with our operations and design.
We planted pine trees along that boundary, and we can go back and reestablish those.
Can you talk closer to the mic, please?
Oh, I'm sorry. We established a buffer there along that property boundary there on our side of the fence. And there is an opening in between the Miller property and ours, and it's where they've moved manure hoses across our property to their other fields. But we have it in there, and if you look on the picture there, we're only looking at this point, taking a small portion of additional trees out of there, and the other portion of it is existing fields. So we're not making a significant amount of reduction of vegetation in that area.
Okay.
And from an operational standpoint, you can see the pivot there. That's part of our landfill leachate system. So we couldn't technically reduce that without finding a different way to remediate our leachate that's created from the landfill.
I have not received complaints about litter along the north property boundaries. Anyone who's come to the facility and has seen the road has come to the facility on the roads, has seen we've done a good job maintaining litter around the facility, and we'll just take extra effort in doing it all over. But I've not had complaints in other areas.
Okay, Mr. Chair, the next question was for future plans for the farm operation for manure storage and perhaps an additional barn, and would a setback need to be maintained from probably the working face of the landfill, I guess, or the business end of the landfill to the facility? From a feedlot standpoint, no. I'm not aware of any setback that a feedlot must maintain from a landfill beyond that, unless the applicants are aware of something I'm not.
I'm not aware of any design requirements.
I have not heard that.
It would be, you would need to maintain a 200-foot setback from the property line, because that's what feedlots are required to maintain. The existence of the landfill itself would not create a larger or different setback. Okay, let's see.
We've tried to have a good working relationship to the farm to the north.
Okay, I'm just, and I guess really what it, and then the last one would just be what is the county proposing to do along the property line to reduce blowing of garbage, and or the neighboring properties from the operation?
As Jeff noted, this is the first time we've had these complaints, so, we'll review our operations and make sure we're trying to confine as much as we can, whether that's additional cleanup or smaller working faces, or additional trash fence. But and we do work very hard to mitigate blowing waste, and that's one of the things the MPCA reviews when they come on site, and we've never had a violation, so.
Mr. Chair, I think that's all I had jotted down unless you have anything more?
No, but I do have maybe a question for the applicants. So you do have some trees on the north end. How tall are they and how long ago were they planted?
Probably when in 2013, they were planted.
Okay, and how tall are they?
10 feet, I imagine.
Okay. So I think the biggest gripe, they're definitely worried about their property. I understand that. We all understand that.
Yep.
And blowing and debris, you plant more trees, there's probably some openings.
Yep.
The landfill's gonna probably be done before them trees get high enough to make an asserted effort to help that landowner to the north. So I would just think maybe a fence that contains that would be probably faster and better, and probably the trees, because the landfill, even when it's done, it's still gonna be there. But I think 10 years from now, the trees are gonna be what they are today that you have planted before. But one other question was property values. That I heard one of the applicants, or not applicant, one of the people that talked, so I think it was Jake.
So property values are based on the market. So there would have to be sales of property around that area that would be negatively impacted for us to show a reason or to have some basis, I guess, for reducing value of property. And so when we value property, that is market driven. It's based on what the sales tell us. So a downward adjustment in value, because a property is adjacent to something that might be perceived as negative, is not a basis for the assessor to make that adjustment. If that property were to sell and it sold for a lot less than what we had on it, we would make that downward adjustment. But until there is sales data that would show that, it wouldn't be something that we would automatically reduce.
Anybody else on the board have anything to ask or add before we go to our criteria questions?
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, John.
play the new guy card here and just make sure I understand this correctly, because it's only 100 feet further. That 100 feet, we can't go to the south because,
The southern limit? So
yes.
the southern limit is actually the old landfill. So the way our landfill is designed, we are cantilevered over the unlined portion that we acquired. So if you were to move to the south, you'd be opening a previous landfill.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Dave.
just a quick comment on the trees on the north line. I mean, there's good reason to plant trees, any number of reasons, dust control, sight lines, whatever. So I'd encourage you to do that. Replace the trees that are missing. They will eventually grow if you persist. Also, I agree with Clint, there's probably better ways to control trash than a tree line, or two even. I think of a snow fence, that certainly would collect a lot of trash going that direction. But that was the only comment on that. And also on land values, I guess, agree with Amy on the land values, and as long as it doesn't change setbacks for any of the property owners, it possibly does not lower land values. I think that was probably the concern of what the public had, what they can do with their land based on this expansion. So, thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Marv.
I also wanted to comment about, the trees obviously would be huge. A fence, snow fence would be ugly, and who'd want that out there? I mean, you've got a wonderful site and things are ran well. And we have an expert, Shannon with Soil and Water, and I don't know if she wants to even comment to get her involved in this one. But anyhow, I think we need to do something to pacify the millers too. And it sounds like you've been working well with millers and Coral to try to make this work. And, that may be the comment by John Tice was about we have all this income coming from the other revenue to be using it towards extending this here or putting some type of fencing, something up, probably is not a bad idea.
Thank you, Marv. You guys ready for the criteria questions? Okay.
Mr. Chair, before we do that, can we possibly talk about a condition of a fence or buffer put to that northern end if we were to have this move forward?
If that's what you want, yeah.
I believe we need to do something.
I'd agree with that, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Okay, so think of that condition as you're, well, we're not voting yet, but let's talk through these criteria questions here. Question 1, we'll start with Marvin. The use will not put an excess of burden on roadways, utilities, and public facilities such as parks and schools.
No, I don't believe it will, and he did an outstanding job filling this out here. I mean, because of the way it's ran, and we have a state-of-the-art facility, and you have a roadway, beautiful roadway coming to it. You have no parks, you have no other schools or anything near that. The only thing you have adjoining farm owner that you've encountered a few issues with. Otherwise, no. It's a definitely yes.
Anybody else have anything to add to question 1? If not, we'll move to question 2. We'll go to John. The request will not be detrimental to the use and enjoyment of other property in the immediate vicinity for the purposes already permitted, nor impede the normal and orderly development and improvement of the surrounding vacant property for uses predominant area.
Well, we've heard from some of the surrounding property owners. The key words being in there, for the purposes already permitted. It sounds like we're gaining efficiencies. You have a plan. You've thought through all of the different locations you could put this. No more comments, Mr. Chair.
Anybody else have anything to add to question?
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Dave.
The applicant's response included the property provides vegetative screening and limits visibility of the operations. So with that statement in mind and with the recommendation of our condition, put that on a front burner, try to maintain that. Every little tree reduces dust, reduces vision, reduces trash, reduces wind, and a lot of other benefits. Thank you.
Okay. Move to question 3, that's for myself. The use and opinion of the Planning Commission is reasonably related to the existing land use and environment. Groundwater, surface water, and air quality in the surrounding area will not be adversely affected. All we're doing is expanding it 100 feet, which, all we're doing. It's just changing it from what county ordinance was to go to in line with the state MCPA's setback. I think with all the safeties that they have in place, With MCP being out there, with our wells that we have in out there, with the liners, the way they manage it, I think that, yes, in a use is an opinion of the planning commission is reasonably related to the existing land use. I don't think groundwater, surface water, air quality, I think is better than it's probably ever been at the landfill. Not saying it's perfect, it's a landfill, right? But especially when you look back at years ago before we had any of these practices. Yeah, I feel for the neighbors, garbage blowing. If I lived there, I'd have the same complaints. That's the nature of the beast, I know that, and it's easy for everybody to say something if you're not living there, but, so I do see that. Anybody have anything else to add to question 3? If not, we'll go to question 4. The use is consistent with the purposes of the zoning ordinance and the purpose of the zoning district in which the applicant intends to locate the proposed use. Brent?
Well, I think most people would likely say that they don't want to have a new landfill in their backyard. But we do have a landfill, and we're talking about trying to be as efficient as we can, expand and comply with MPCA. This is in a rural area in our agricultural production, and so there probably isn't a better place for it to continue to be than there. But we need to understand the concerns of the folks that spoke here tonight and address those issues moving forward.
Anybody else have anything to add to question 4? If not, we'll move to question 5. The use is not in conflict with the comprehensive plan or the water plan of the county. Dave?
For the most part, yes, I'd say so. And I think the applicants have done a very good job of answering all these questions, all good reasons to say yes. Coming to this question, though, I think the one thing that's in the Morrison County Comprehensive Plan that the applicant agreed with is that it's to process Morrison County trash. And, you know, one of the things discussed was going from 28,000 tons of trash a year to 40,000 tons of trash a year. At 40,000 tons of trash a year, there's a 21-year plan. I mean, if you didn't accept outside waste anymore, I know that's a dollar number involved there, but maybe you just increase fees until it offsets that and whatever. But I would think the highest priority would be to process Morrison County trash as long as possible. How much of that 40,000 tons per year could be reduced, and how long could you lengthen the plan by doing so? So I'm not going to vote against this or say no on this question, but I'm going to challenge the commissioners to really grapple with that. You know, what is the purpose of the landfill? And it is directly related to this, you know, encroaching further on neighboring property. And you're doing that so you can admit more trash from outside of the county? Or are you doing that so you can provide the county with a longer range of services? So that's my challenge to the commissioners. Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead, Marvin.
I agree with Dave's comments over there, and I wanted to also speak to anyone that knows the Miller's operation, the Coral's operation, well ran, and they take pride of their operation. They keep their site neat and clean and everything else, and I feel unfortunate what they have to deal with. So hopefully this is addressed, because this is huge. So whatever the commissioners decide, they will decide here. But I think this needs to be addressed if we're going to do this.
Okay, any more discussion, or are you ready to vote on the questions? Keeping in mind the condition. Okay, so start on question 1. The use will not put an excess burden on roadways, utilities, and public facilities such as schools and parks. Marvin?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Myself, Clint Catherine, is yes. Brent?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Okay, question 2, the request will not be detrimental to the use and enjoyment of other property in the immediate vicinity for the purposes already permitted, nor impede the normal and orderly development and improvement of surrounding vacant property for uses predominant in the area. John?
Yes.
Clint Catherine, myself is yes. Brent?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Marvin?
Yes.
Question 3, the use in the opinion of the planning commission is reasonably related to the existing land use and the environment. Groundwater, surface water, and air quality in the surrounding area will not be adversely affected by the proposed use. Myself, Clint Catherine is yes. Brent?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Marvin?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Question 4, the use is consistent with the purposes of the zoning ordinance and the purposes of the zoning district in which the applicant intends to locate the proposed use. Brent?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Marvin?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Myself, Clint Catherine is yes. Question 5, the use is not in conflict with the comprehensive plan or the water plan of the county. Dave?
Yes.
Marvin?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Myself, Clint Catherine's yes. Brent?
Yes.
Okay, all the questions were answered in affirmative. Would somebody have a motion to recommend approval or denial?
Mr. Chair, I move that we recommend this to the County Board of Commissioners for approval with considerations as to public input and input by the Planning Commission.
And you had a,
With the
With conditions of what?
Do we have conditions?
Yes, I had a condition of putting some type of buffer, tree line, fence line, something to that extent.
Sure.
okay. So restate that again.
I would include that.
Oh,
Oh,
Marvin, what?
I would
condition?
like to have a condition of some type of,
how many rows of trees or?
I'm not saying the rules, so I'm looking at, we need to put a condition of some type of buffer, whether it be trees are in a fence, or something to pacify the neighbors to prevent any more of this garbage flowing over and coming on their property, and keep it where it's not as visible, or, doing something that works with the neighbors on this.
I'd include that in my motion.
So you want trees and a fence or just trees?
I would need something a little clearer as far as for, usually conditions are pretty prescriptive as far as what it would be. And so I would need something a little bit
Okay, I believe
specific.
one fence needs to be done for sure, and trees to addition would be great. But I don't think the trees will grow up fast enough to do anything here. That's why I'm proposing at least the fence.
Okay, so you're recommending, so Dave is actually making this motion?
Yeah. Okay, go ahead, Dave, redo your motion.
Okay, would you read the condition again, Amy? I'm sorry.
I'm unclear as to what the condition is.
Okay.
And Mr. Chair, at this point, I guess I would maybe put that back on the applicant and ask them what they propose. As far as they know that area better than we do, as far as what would be most effective to address the concerns, perhaps?
As we stated earlier, this is the first time we heard of these concerns, so it's kind of hard for us to address them when we're not aware of them. So what we'd like to do is evaluate our operations and do additional cleanup if required. I would make a recommendation of not proposing a fence, because as the Millers noted and Mr. Carroll noted, they drag their manure hoses across our property, and a fence would impede their operations. So as a good neighbor, we try to work very hard with them. And if we were made aware of these conditions, we would have addressed them sooner. So in the meantime, after this meeting, we'll evaluate things with Jeff, we'll evaluate things with the rest of our staff, and try to make improvements for them. The other thing I kind of noted, I'm not aware of the gentleman's name, but it was the second Mr. Miller along the west side. And when he was referring to the woods, I believe he's talking about tromping in our woods, not his property.
Well, okay,
With that
so
being-
just wait 1 second, Marv. I don't want a condition. I think this is a county thing. We're looking at changing the amendment to the conditional use permit from our 300 foot to 200 foot, okay? That's what we're looking at. I think we should trust our counties, our engineer, the people that run the landfill, the county commissioners, the county, to work with the landowners to come up with something. I don't think we have to condition the county on planting trees. I think it should be up to, if we can't trust our county engineer or the people that run the landfill, I think we got bigger problems than worrying about a 200 foot to 300 foot distance. So my thing is no condition.
Mr. Chair, I think one of the things that I need to do in between now and the county board meeting also is confer with our county attorney on whether or not we have the ability to put additional conditions on, because this is an amendment, and the request is just to amend that one particular condition. And so I need to get advice from our county attorney on whether it's even possible to add additional conditions. So that might be, I think the county board is here. They're hearing this conversation. I think they've heard loud and clear that you are encouraging them to look at how to improve that. In the meantime, I can find out from the county attorney if we even have the ability to do that on a CUP amendment.
Okay, so just real quick. So Tony, you'll meet with the landowners and come up with something.
Absolutely.
Okay, that's good enough for me. Marv, you want to?
Mr. Chair, that's what I was going to say. I wanted to rescind this and with them to come up with a solution between the landowners and the county would be the best.
Okay, so go ahead, Dave, make a motion.
Okay. Again, I will, with the reminder that I think back in 2013, we talked about this vegetative screening. That's why you've got it in your application question. And we just expect you to move forward with that and maintain it and do a better job than you have possibly. Okay, with that in mind, yes, no conditions. I move that we recommend the approval of this request to the Morrison County Board of Commissioners.
Mr. Chair, I'll second that.
Okay, so we have a motion made to recommend approval to the amendment to this conditional use permit. All in favor will say aye. So Brent?
Aye.
Dave?
Aye.
Marvin?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Myself, Clint Catherine's aye, so it passes. So it'll be up to the county commissioners on March 28th. Thank you, guys.
Thank you for your time, gentlemen.
Thank you.
And thank you to all the public, too. Okay, so guess we have some minutes from February 28th. Anybody see anything wrong with them? If not, we'll make a motion to approve.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second?
Okay, motion's made and seconded to approve the minutes. All in favor say aye. Myself is aye. Brent? Dave? Marvin?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Okay, minutes approved. Any new business? I don't believe so. Any old business? I don't believe so. So take a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, motion's made and second to adjourn. All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, meeting adjourned at 8:28.